Hello and welcome back to the Punchers Chance podcast, and welcome to the review show where we have a look back at what happened in boxing last weekend. Of course, that is Ben Whittaker's emphatic knockout over Benjamin Gavazi and Jeamie TKV causing possibly an upset against Frazer Clarke. All that good stuff and the rest of the cards to stick around for two podcasts every single week. For those on the video version, of course, we've got no Ben sat next to us today. Trains have delayed him, but the show goes on.
Trains have delayed him.
All the trains. Straight into the action. Ben Whittaker beat Benjamin Gavazi. Now, we weren't expecting this to be a close 50-50 fight, but maybe didn't expect it to be quite as emphatic as it was in the end. What did you make of his performance, of the Ben Whittaker show, all that good stuff?
Well, it's always fun when the Ben Whittaker show does come around. You always get excited to see him, when he gets in the ring and all. And listen, Saturday night, I was very surprised by it because I thought, it was his first fight under Andy Lee. And I was thinking perhaps there'll be a different approach, but he saw an opening and he just went for it. And I think there was one, when he knocked him down the first time, there was like a sort of realization of, okay, right, we're going to get him out of here sooner rather than later. And he sort of like turned to the corner, and I think he's probably looking at the two legs of Andy Lee thinking he's probably there, calm down, get back to your boxing and this shot will come again. And it did. And it was emphatic. And I think you can't go ahead and say it was a statement for the light heavyweight division because the opponent wasn't as great as Jake Paul's promoter was putting around on X or Saturday night. So fair play to him for that. But look, it was good to see Ben Whittaker back out. He did shock me in a way because I didn't think he would get the stoppage that early, in the first round. And it just builds on now that him under Eddie Hearn is going to be some exciting fights coming. Yeah,
I think that there's two ways to kind of look at it. One way is that people are getting too excited going, oh my God, he's the next big thing. He's, light heavyweight division, watch out. Better Biev, watch out. That's not the truth. The reality of the matter is
they can.
That the win on that off that performance doesn't put him in that stature. On the equal side of it, I think there was people that weren't expecting that emphatic a victory from Ben Whittaker, and therefore you can be impressed and excited about it. I think for me, with Ben Whittaker, we know in the amateur ranks, he was a phenomenal boxer. He won a silver medal in the Olympics. That doesn't come by accident. Yeah. Has that translated over to the pros in his early fights? Yes, absolutely. With the hype he brought with him? Yes, absolutely. With the style he brought with him? Yes, absolutely. But I think now what we're seeing as he matures, as he works under Andy Lee, is a far more professional Ben Whittaker. And I mean that in two of the senses. That one, he's not slapping people with the back of his glove anymore, but also actually he's finding the right times to sit down on his shots, to put a bit of weight behind that right hand. It's not quite as flash in points, but then arguably a big, huge knockout like that is more flash than any of the theatrics he put on before. So for me, I think what you've got, and like you say, with the kind of PR machine that Matchroom have behind them, the talker that Eddie Hearn is, the talker that Ben Whittaker is, it is a recipe for success. Yeah. What that success will be, whether it will be a British title, whether it will be beyond that, we'll have to wait and see. But I absolutely think that what they've got at the moment with Andy Lee, Eddie Hearn, Ben Whittaker is exciting.
And I think the more I look back on Ben Whittaker's sort of 2025 and 2024 in a way, was that fight against Liam Cameron over in Saudi Arabia was a sort of humbling experience for him that night, where he sort of had that realization of, I'm not where I think I am at the moment. And Liam Cameron brought that out of him, and he was rather fortunate that night to get that win. But he's improved vastly since then, and he's probably thought of, right, to back up what I'm saying outside the ring, I need to put in some clinical performances. And he did that against Cameron emphatically. Again, no one really saw an early stoppage come in, but it was different this time around because he's under, the Matchroom banner now. That's the pressure of main event in DAZN and all that. He was fighting for a ranking WBC title as well. I just think now for Ben Whittaker, it's all about showing people glimpses into the future of, I've got potential, but if you give me the right opportunities. And I think now he's going to have a different approach to him of going, I am beatable, so I'm not going to make myself beatable. I'm going to be smart with the options I take next. He's a top-level British fighter at the light heavyweight in the light heavyweight division. I think that's clear. I think he does win a British title. But beyond that, who knows? Again, we need to see more. We need to see him, he's in the best place, ain't he? You know, under Andy Lee's guidance. You know, look at what Andy Lee has done this year alone. Hamza Shiraz over in New York City in the summer absolutely destroyed Edgar Berlanga in a rather, again, humbling sort of performance by Shiraz that night. So he's got that in his arsenal now to sort of, you know, he's got Andy Lee in his corner that can back him up. So, listen, it's exciting for Ben Whittaker. Again, it's just the opponent that was put in front of him Saturday night was a sort of opponent that you expect Eddie Hearn and Matchroom to match him up against. To his first show in the zone, let's start with a bang, and he did start with a bang.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think I think style wise it just makes a lot of sense with Andy Lee because we've seen it. I mean, even in his own career, Andy Lee could bang, he could seriously crack, and so the way that I think that will mould well is that Ben Whittaker doesn't need lessons on how to box, how to manage range, how to use a good jab. He's got that in abundance. It's how to get that right hand, you know, cooking when he needs to. And like you said, we've seen that in both the Liam Cameron fight and then again in this one. So yeah, I think really exciting times for Ben Whittaker. You know, talking about next fights. I mean, this is when we need Ben. This is what he's the
promoter.
This is what he's best at. But for me, I think the winner of Dan Aziz, Craig Richards, that's happening in Ghana at Christmas. If you got a fight in maybe January for Ben Whittaker, another warm up, and then the winner of that fight, sort of springtime in 2026, I think that'd be a great fight for him. But like you say, he holds probably now a top 5 WBC title. You could argue the fact that he could move a lot faster than that. I just hope he doesn't. I hope they manage him similar to like they did with Dalton Smith, Matchroom, where yes, okay, he's right on the edge of a British title, of a world title fight, but let's get him the European, let's get him the Commonwealth, let's get him the British.
Take him off.
And then wait for the right opportunity to come round. And I think for Dalton Smith in the form of Subriel Matias, that's a very winnable fight. Liam Parra has proved to us that's a very winnable fight. If you're Ben Whittaker in 2025, Bivol's not a winnable fight. Beterbiev's not a winnable fight. Benavidez, the 3 Bs, neither of them are winnable fights. But
I think
if somebody gets themselves into a position where they're fighting for it,
100%.
Then suddenly you're looking at it going, there's a fight there for me.
But again, I think that goes back to that first Liam Cameron fight, doesn't it? That before that, Ben Whittaker was probably saying he'll beat the likes of Beterbiev, Bivol, and now he's had that sort of experience. He's probably setting himself back a little bit, saying, I need to be patient now. You know, you can't rush boxing, can you? That's one of the mistakes a lot of boxers have made, that they've rushed into fights when if they just hold off for a year or even 6 months, then that opportunity will come around. But I'm not saying that, listen, 2026, if Ben Whittaker becomes world champion, that'll be huge. I don't see it happening.
Neither. Yeah, I don't see him not winning one necessarily.
I see him having a title that means something that a lot of people will give him recognition for, because I don't think this WBC title, a lot of people are going to be looking at him going, oh, fair play, mate. A British title, I think a lot of people would start thinking, okay, Ben Whittaker's the real deal now. There's something to be, you know, paying attention to there. And I don't know if it's the right fight after his performance in Wembley in, was it August when Usyk Dubois fought? Or July? I think it was one of them.
This is Louis Edmondson.
You know, that's
great
been
fight.
boiling around for a bit. There's a lot of back and forth. Again, it's marketable. You know, for Eddie Hearn would love that. Frank Warren's fighter, 5v5 in February. And again, he's only had 1 round. So a lot of people are saying online that it was a wasted camp. This is probably the perfect outcome for Ben Whittaker on Saturday night. It's his debut for Matchroom. He got the stoppage, and he's now, everyone's talking about that. You know, the boxing fans are only tuning in because, you know, he's a part of the Matchroom banner now. But I'm excited to see where he goes next. I'd love him to fight Louis Edmondson. But I think the word that I sort of put aside Ben Whittaker is he needs to be patient with his work now, because he's got something with Andy Lee. He just needs to take his time and work on it. And when he gets to that level, he's going to announce himself 10 times more than what he would have done if he was rushed there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And I'd like to know what people who are listening or watching know. Let us know in the comments, where do you think, and we'll answer this question in just a second, where do you think Ben Whittaker's going to be this time 2026, so back end of 2026? What are we going to be talking about with Ben Whittaker? Is it going to be, you know, a nearly fight that he lost? Is it going to be a big title fight? What is it going to be? Because for me, I think come the end of 2026, you're looking at he's probably got a British title around his waist.
He should. Yeah.
And you're probably looking for the step before the world title fight. I think if you're going to build him, and this is all of that, me saying that is considering that he goes through each obstacle successfully, which is far from a guaranteed deal. But I think you'd be looking at probably mid 2027 before you're looking at a world title for Ben Whittaker, for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, it goes back to being patient now. And next year now, he can just take them all off,
Yeah.
Let's see what he can do and gradually take those steps up now. I think that's the main thing for him.
Or he gets chinned in January and it's back to square one. We'll have to wait and see.
A lot of people are putting his name alongside Greatest Christ. The Dutch guy,
for GBM.
GBM. So that could be an interesting fight. Obviously, he fought on the weekend as well. So
I just don't think it makes sense. Commercially, it's just like Ben Whittaker is commercially on a different level, and actually it just represents a greater risk than reward. Yeah. That's why I think a Craig Richards or a Dan Aziz is a fight that, in a couple, 2 fights time, 3 fights time, maybe he should be winning that fight. But actually they hold an acumen and if he beats Dan Aziz, for example, that sets up a Louis Edmondson fight. That was a very close fight. That makes sense as the next fight. So we'll have to wait and see. Either way, I think I've been, from quite early on in this podcast, a big Ben Whittaker advocate. We spoke to him, we interviewed him. That interview's still up on the channel, which was actually before the Liam Cameron fight, which is quite sort of interesting as timing wise. But no, I'm really happy. I'm really happy that he's back. And I just think as well, being at Matchroom, people just will have more time for him, because there was always a kind of air of negativity when you're at a boxer because of the way they did dealings and things, that you're always going to wind people up the wrong way. Matchroom are very good at just making people, if not likeable, marketable. So, all exciting stuff on there. And of course, unfortunately, after he got back, someone's nabbed his IBF belt, but not in the ring. Someone's just broken into his house.
Yeah, scumbag.
The very belt that Ben held in a picture. Ben's got a picture of himself, that belt round his arm.
I'm trying to think if I must have held it as well.
Yeah, because he handed it to one of you while I interviewed him.
Mind.
Yeah,
I'll give him
heavy
that,
duty.
so
I think, did you see the picture? And again, I'm not advocating this in any way as a good thing, but did you see the picture of the guy on the tube?
I did.
I don't know if it's real or not, but
if it is,
the idea of trying to sell an IBF Intercontinental belt on the tube is a little bit bait.
That they got on him.
Yeah. But from one burglary to a robbery, Cameron Vuong versus Gavin Gwynne, I'm joking. I actually think,
for some people that are watching this for the first time, obviously, beforehand, Sam shouted into the studio as he's setting it all up on the computer, something that I can't do. And he went, "Harry, I've got a good segue into the next segment."
Yeah.
And that was it. So
that was it. About 10 minutes in the making.
Bravo, fair play. What is that robbery though that you're talking about? Because I'm not too sure.
I'm joking. I don't actually think it was a robbery. I think a draw was a fair result between Gwynne and Vuong in that second fight. I think it could have gone 6-4 either way. I wouldn't have had any great. I think the reason people are unhappy with it is because the first fight probably was a bit of a robbery, if such a thing exists. So I think that's why, as a whole, you're looking at it and you go, well, Gav's won at least sort of 11 or 12 of the 20 rounds and he's come away without a win. But that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. I think both guys showed a lot, but also showed deficiencies. What did you make of both men's performances?
Well, it was, when you were watching it was like the first couple of rounds, I thought, fair play. Cameron Vuong's doing very well, yeah. That uppercut is landing cleanly. Gavin Gwynne's allowing him to sort of fight the way he wanted to fight for Vuong. And then obviously when he got into the fourth round, he seemed to fatigue, tire. And Gwynne, being the sort of fighter he is, he just kept coming forward and he's relentless, he's ruthless. And in a way, he was taking him to deep waters. And in parts of that fight, you're watching it and it felt like the Gwynne was drowning him with the pressure that he was putting on him. And at one point, I was thinking to myself, Gav could get him out of you. He was that negative, Cameron Vuong. And then rounds 9 and 10, Cameron Vuong seemed to find a second life. He came back from nowhere, really. He probably didn't know that he had that left in the tank. So you got to give him credit for someone that's so young. We talked about it when the first fight came around, about it being a bit too early. That's why we were very confident about Gavin Gwynne winning that first fight. He took so much from that first fight in Birmingham as well, nearly a year ago. and he's grown, he's learned as a fighter and all that. But I think in these sort of 20 rounds that they shared with one another, I think Cameron Vuong, in the most harshest way possible and most brutal way possible, has found his level, I think.
Yeah, I agree. But then equally, you're framing that within Gavin Gwynne as a British Commonwealth European champ. Like, that is a level.
But he's been there and done it. And he's, in all respect to Gav, he's, if he lost that fight on Saturday night, I think he's done. He's retired, probably. So, listen, he was a great fight. It was probably the best fight of the weekend.
Yeah.
The other fights on that card and the BBC show that we'll get on to later weren't the best. But listen, these two can make a career out of fighting each other. There's an argument now that there should be a trilogy. As a lot of people had it, 95-95. Like you said, I wouldn't have argued against that, and that was what the result was in the end, a draw. Cameron Vuong is going to take a lot from that fight. Gavin Gwynne's going to take a lot from that fight. You just hope now, because it's weird, because Gav's in a weird position now, ain't he, where no one really wants to fight him, and he had that struggle after that first fight where he wasn't getting fights, he was having promises broken and all that, and he was back working, doing a 9-to-5 job, and then obviously he fought in the summer. He did a same-day weigh-in. We all know what happened after that fight. And then he finally got that rematch that he rightfully deserved. And, I think he'll be driving back down from Birmingham to Merthyr on Sunday afternoon, I'm assuming he did, with his held up high, thinking, I got something from that fight. It wasn't a robbery. I didn't get the win, obviously disappointed, but he got something from that fight.
Yeah, I think Gav was impressive. It was textbook Gavin. I think Cameron Vuong was very impressive in able, because, like you said, he was relentless. And I agree with you. He's found his level, but and I echo your sort of phrasing that isn't a bad thing in any means. No. That's a very impressive level. But like also, he's doing it 23 years of age. There is an opportunity still for him to kick on and find other opportunities, find other titles. He's only 10-1 now. Yeah. And he's fought a European, Commonwealth and British champion. Very impressive. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what comes of Cameron Vuong or what fights they give him next. But huge respect to him for getting back in there with Gav. You easily could have tried to go, let's not do that one again. Let's pretend that didn't happen. But they didn't. They got back in there. It would
have stained his career if he never fought Gavin Gwynne again.
It would have, but he got the win, and he had 2 fights since he beat Jordan Flynn. I think eventually it's not like Cameron Vuong's going to go on and become a 2-weight undisputed champion, and they're going to go, but you didn't fight Gavin Gwynne for a second time. I think
clip it.
I think people would have people would have forgotten about it, and it wouldn't have really mattered in the grand scheme of things. But fair play to him. He went in for a fight a second time, knowing what was ahead of him, and came out with a draw that he probably would have even been a fair result in the first fight.
But I think it was a draw, either that or 96-94. Either way, like you said. So
yeah, absolutely no complaints. Aaron Bowen lost to Tom Cowling.
Yeah, the upset of the weekend.
Yeah, interesting result. I think, Aaron Bowen is, if you're talking interesting 50-50 fights, he's the man to call. Yeah. But obviously, coming over from the amateur ranks hasn't necessarily done quite what maybe some people thought he might. But, I think, again, brought a huge crowd to that one.
That's what I was quite surprised about, to be honest, because Aaron Bowen, obviously, that fight was after Gwynne and Vuong. So
yeah, because the tickets he sold, they said.
I was a bit shocked with that. But no, listen, it was a decent watch, a decent fight. Bowen, I want to say did he make his debut this year? Aaron Bowen.
I'll have to double check for you. It feels like it wasn't very long. No, it was 2023.
2023. Oh wow!
But he's fought 4 times this year. He has been busy, and so James Todd was back end of last year.
Everyone remembers that James Todd fight. That was probably the best. What was it? 6-rounder.
5 of 6 rounds.
Incredible fight that was. Great value for money. But again, Aaron Bowen's that sort of fighter that perhaps made that jump up a bit too soon and got found out that he's not at that level just yet. So it'll come back. What was that for? The West Midlands area title?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
It's a title that's got
the Midlands area.
You can come back and fight for that. So you shouldn't be too worried about it. But I think there's one fight that we have to talk about. We've been stalling it. It's not on this card. I want to talk about the BBC show.
Yes.
The debut that was highly anticipated by us.
Yeah.
That, if I'm being honest, didn't live up to the hype.
No,
that I thought the main event would. The coverage was,
Yeah.
it could have been better. But am I happy that boxing's back on free-to-air TV? 100%, because I get a message off my BAMPs who doesn't have Sky, doesn't have TNT, doesn't have DAZN, that's messaging me saying, did you watch the boxing? And that's the sort of thing now where you're getting casual boxing fans, you know, just as everyone does in the nights on Saturday when there's nothing really on, you know, you don't really want to be watching Strictly Come Dancing, you know, you want to be watching something that's entertaining, and it's good to have boxing back, but it wasn't entertaining.
Yeah, I do agree. I want to preface this by saying, as a man who got a letter from the TV licensing company over the weekend, that I didn't watch this fight. So this is everything that I'm about to say.
You had a letter.
Everything I'm about to say is just things I've picked up from you know, hearing what people have to say.
You had a letter.
Yeah, and I did so because of that, I didn't watch the fight. But that being said, I was really bored while watching the fight, to be completely honest. I was
just on Twitter laughing at all the jokes that people were making about the commentator.
No, I didn't think it was dreadful, but it was as in the fight. It was the problem was it was a British title fight. It was a heavyweight fight between two British fighters. Those are two things that are normally dead set excitement. Nearly every time we've seen either two British heavyweights fight each other or a British title fight in almost any division, it's fireworks, it's exciting, it's fun. And this one wasn't that. Both men were attritional. They wasn't the most technical bout in the world. They both looked knackered after about 5 rounds.
One way to put it.
Which doesn't help. And I think on paper, it was the perfect way. The two fights they picked, with Fran Hennessy fighting for the WBC International.
Good performance.
And then a British heavyweight title fight. As a two, it's the perfect pair to put on free-to-air television. If people are just scrolling through and go, oh, boxing's on telly, I'll watch that. Oh, fun, young, exciting young fighter in Fran. And then what should have been, you know, fireworks in the main event. It wasn't on paper. But yeah, no, I don't mind it, and I can see what they were going for, but it didn't quite come through.
Yeah, the styles sort of didn't match. Both men were looking for that big shot. I think both men realised the stage that they were on. You know, they're boxing live on BBC. They want to have that headline of TKV or Clarke knockout win or something like that, and it didn't come, and you can tell that both men wanted to get it done early. Both men probably expected it to be done early by the way they looked at the end of the 12 rounds. I was quite surprised that Frazer Clarke was allowed to come out after the 11th. I thought, well, I wouldn't have been against his corner sort of pulling him out there because he didn't look with it. He looked out of it. He looked, well, fatigued. He looked, like you said, shattered in a nice way to put it. And he should have, well, like I said, he should have been pulled out. I thought that was a perfect call by his corner because he was literally out on his feet. You're literally just putting him out there as a target for if TKV lands that one shot that he was trying to land 8 rounds earlier, it could have serious consequences to it after it landed with the tiredness of Clarke. But again, it just goes back to Clarke now of when he fought Fabio Wardley, how much did that fight take out of him?
Yeah,
the first time round, and also the scary stoppage that he had in Riyadh. You know, seeing that on Saturday night, it did seem like, obviously when he fought Tete in his return fight on the undercard of Whittaker Cameron 2, he sort of, oh my God, Clarke's back, you know, another British heavyweight to get behind and support after a loss. And let's see how his rebuild's like. And again, I think Saturday night when you fight at a similar level, you get found out. And I think in the same sense of Vuong, harshly, he's found his level now, Frazer Clarke.
Yeah, the difference is Frazer Clarke's obviously had a very impressive, illustrious amateur career before he turned over. Arguably,
a very long amateur career.
Stayed in there too long. It is crazy when you bring up that Fabio Wardley fight. When you look at that, you're talking about the current WBO world champion and a man who just lost to Jeamie TKV for the British title. And that first fight was a draw. And I think if you were to give any of the two fighters a victory from that first Fabio Wardley Frazer Clarke fight, it probably would have been Frazer Clarke by a round if you had to split the hairs. So when you look at that and then the trajectories that they've gone on, it's really, really impressive from Fabio Wardley and unfortunate that that's the way things have fallen for Frazer Clarke. But, you know, I think Frazer Clarke's had an immense career when you look at it as a whole. And I don't necessarily think that he has too much else to do or to give or to put into the sport of boxing. Obviously, that's not something for me to tell. You know, that's something for him to decide. But I wouldn't be at all disappointed if Frazer Clarke said, "Yeah, do you know what? I've had my run, and I'm gonna call it a day." Whereas, you know, for Jeamie TKV now, you know, he's a fighter that maybe you'd have said, "I don't know what he's got in this sport," but now actually you look at him and you think, you know, the likes of David Adelaide, the likes of Dave Allen. There is exciting fights in the future for Jeamie TKV, particularly now he's got that Lonsdale belt around his waist.
Well, exactly. And Frazer Clarke, like you highlighted there, I think if he comes out and says he's done, like you said, great career. He's given us some great memories. That Fabio Wardley Frazer Clarke fight, I think every boxing fan in Britain probably rewatches that fight at least twice a year, or has a celebration of when Easter comes around. Instead of celebrating it with your family, you're rewatching an incredible war on Easter. It was so good. But I think for TKV, there's brilliant fights out there for him. You know, as you said, he holds that British title now. So in a way, he controls the sort of domestic scene now in Britain, where he goes, I'll fight him, but I want blah, 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 X amount of money. And, you know, Dave Allen got stopped. Did he get stopped? I think he got stopped by Frazer Clarke when they fought. Dave Allen could be looking at that on Saturday night thinking, I could avenge myself by fighting a Clarke. Obviously, he has to make a decision, Frazer, beforehand. But he could be looking at TKV thinking, well, from what I saw on Saturday night, there was nothing impressive there. From what I saw on Saturday night, if TKV and Dave Allen went up against each other, Dave Allen would be favourite going into that fight. Yeah,
quite possibly. And I think actually, again, I'm not sure how entertaining that fight would be. I think style-wise, it might be similar to that Frazer Clarke TKV fight.
Looking for that one shot,
and being a bit knackered anyway. But like you say, I think we've seen it rumoured, or I think Eddie's been saying that Dave Allen's going to fight on the Lee Wood Josh Warrington undercard in February in a 10-rounder, and then headline back up in Sheffield, his next fight. If you're looking at Frazer Clarke in a 10-rounder and then TKV for the British title in Sheffield as a little pair of fights that for Dave Allen, obviously saying that he gets through that Frazer Clarke fight, that's a great little double to get him back to the limelight, obviously after losing to Makhmudov.
Yeah, and well, it's what, in a way, you can say is what he deserves as well, Dave Allen, because he's been such a great servant to British boxing, hasn't he, over the years. He's that sort of fighter where you go, oh, he'll fight anyone. And he has, really. When you look back at his record, he's fought the likes of Lewis Ortiz, Dillian White, David Price, Lucas Brown. You know, some fights didn't go his way. Well, a lot of those fights actually didn't go his way, but he had that memorable night at the O2 against Brown, that body shot, incredible. So, yeah, I wouldn't be against sort of when is Wood Warrington? January?
February.
So in February
21st, I think it is.
Taking an easy 10-rounder, perhaps 8-rounder, who knows? And then let's go at TKV, because I feel like he'd probably look at that fight and thinking that's a lot easier than Makhmudov.
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah, no, I think that would be a good fight for him. And then Fran Hennessy as well, fighting against Fabiana Bitki, former atomweight champion, now up at bantamweight. I thought, like you said, I think it was an impressive performance from Fran. It asked her some more questions than some of her other fights have. It demanded a little bit more from her than some of her other fights have. But actually, she gave a little bit more and showed a little bit more.
She seems to be maturing, I think, Fran Hennessy, from the more you watch her now. And I remember you interviewed her up in
Barnsley.
Yeah. And you're just looking and you're thinking, fair play, you know, she's got a lot of potential, you know, she's so marketable. I think when you look, if you want to compare her to a male fighter, you got, you know, Ben Whittaker, you know, her ring walk, you know, completely different style in the ring, you know, so comfortable. And, you know, you look at the women's scene in British boxing at the moment. I don't think there's a fighter that people want to focus on more than Fran Hennessy, because I feel like that there's something there that, you know, I said this quite a lot in this podcast, to get excited about, because again, she's kicked off that new era on BBC. You know, if you're tuning in on Saturday night, never heard of Fran Hennessy before, never seen her before, and you're watching her ring walk, you're probably thinking, this is a bit fun. This is something I want to watch and I want to support. And, you know, she's found a market there, hasn't she? That she can go, well, if it doesn't work out, this is what I can do, you know? And
yeah,
I think it was a good performance. I want to say it was a complete shutout as well of the 10 rounds that they fought.
I don't actually, haven't had a look. It was pretty, dominant.
It was a dominant performance, as really expected.
Well, against a former WBC champion, albeit atomweight, very, you know, it's not a hugely represented.
I didn't know that weight existed.
It's a bit of a Clarissa Shields title sort of thing where there's not so much competition around it. Ooh, but no, I think there's, like, with the stuff with Fran, I think there's people that will be turned off from her by the dancing so what? You've got to be yourself, who you want to be, and people will take it or leave it. And
if that's how she gets comfortable before getting into the zone before a fight, let her do it.
Yeah, I think it's good fun. I think it's a good laugh. You know, and if you look at that bantamweight division, as a fighter, you've got the likes of Tycee Gallagher, obviously with GBM. You know, I think there's some great fights you could have there with her. Someone like Ramla Ali, who, again, a hugely marketable presence, hasn't maybe necessarily done all of the... I think she might be, yeah. You know, so there is options out there. And even someone like... Stevie Levy, who's been fighting on the top tier cards.
Great stuff.
I mean, there'll be a dance off before which again, some people will hate that, some people will love it. I think it's a good laugh, and there's lots of tests out there for Fran before she gets to the very top of the division, the likes of Ellie Scottney. But yeah, no, I think
she was on commentary or was on the presenting team. Yeah, they're great fights. And Stevie Levy, I think, is a brilliant character, and you can just imagine that sort of fight build up and all. Ring walks. I think Stevie Levy, if you had a swag jar after a fight on top tier on Sunday, you'd probably be a very rich man walking around today.
Oh yeah, big time. But no, I think there's good stuff. And do you know what? I was surprised because my dad mentioned Fran to me because he heard her on the radio or something, and I assumed when he mentioned it, I can't remember who I assumed it was. I assumed it was another fighter for some reason. But yeah, you know, she's done well. Boxer are doing well to get her out there. I think there's some reasonably exciting stuff to come from.
I can't lie, she's one of my favourite female boxers at the moment.
Yeah, no, I echo that. I think there's some fun stuff out there. What was your fight of the weekend? Which was your favourite?
Cameron Vuong, Gavin Gwynne, obviously. Apart from that, I thought Jack Massey, he was in an interesting fight. He got knocked down quite early.
Yeah, he got dropped.
And then came back and got the stoppage. So perhaps that was a bit fun. The other one as well that we haven't even touched upon is we've got another son fighting. You know, we fought Conor Ben and Chris Eubank Jr. We thought that was the sort of ending of father and son disputes and all that. Manny Pacquiao's son entered the square circle on a Saturday night over in the States, got a draw against a teacher, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah. I
gave him a lesson.
I think the teacher gave him a lesson, yeah. I think it was a draw, and I think he is a teacher.
It was a draw, yeah. No, yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. But
the Pacquiao legacy continues.
It does indeed.
Though
Pacquiao's not even left the ring himself.
Left the ring yet.
Yeah. So. No, the thing for me more the top tier card on Sunday,
yes.
Konstantin Ursu's picks up another belt. Less, not vintage Ursu, because Ryan Amos is, a solid guy. But I think, great steps for him. Exciting to see what he does. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it looks like he's probably not going to be fighting on top tier anymore because Johnny can't afford to pay for the titles that Konstantin is going to be fighting for. So a shame in that sense. But he's done so well. I remember that last fight. I think it was Ethan James was the name of the opponent in the York Hall, and he beforehand we were hearing rumours that he didn't want to come out and fight because he wasn't feeling very well and all of this stuff, and I'm thinking, is the fight going to get called off? Like, what's going on? And then he comes out and gets one of the most emphatic knockouts of the year live on DAZN in the York Hall, which is always exciting. So you guys kind of mentioned it on the group chat. He's one of the most difficult interviews I've given because he's a very intense man.
Is he your favourite interviewee?
No,
I think you ask him a question and you probably go, Ursu, incredible performance, and he probably looks at you in a way wanting to smash your face in.
He does. Yeah, it's a very weird dynamic where he looks like he wants to smash your face in, but nothing he says backs up that statement. So you're sort of, it's a sort of back and forth cat and mouse game. But I got through it. He didn't punch me in the face.
Were you holding the mic like that?
Yeah, I had it.
When you asked the question,
I had the mic in Philly shell, so I had the mic blocking the head, and then my hand on my stomach in case he went for the body shot.
You were prepared.
I was ready to go. But yeah, exciting times. If you haven't seen that already, it is on DAZN. Like, it's not sponsored or anything, but Top Tier have been great to us. Ben, obviously, the reason he's not with us today is because he was doing work for Top Tier on that show, and then
Do you know the other good thing about that Top Tier show?
I'm sure you'll tell me.
Andy Clarke commentary. I think he is the best out there. Speaks his mind. And hopefully, do we have a little exclusive?
I don't know if we can say that.
Okay,
but also he did shout us out once on the Top Tier stream.
Yeah, he did
shout us out. Lovely guy.
I hope he gets picked up by DAZN, because I think he deserves to have a gig like that because he is really good.
He is great, but then equally, I always say, I think people don't like Adam Smith for various reasons, whatever, his commentary style, but when you rewatch Eubank Ben 1 and you got that when Eubank Senior arrives with Chris together, I don't think any better man could have done it. No. I think the way he built that moment is beautiful. So,
but the thing is, when I tune into a IBA sort of fight night, I'm only watching it because Andy Clarke's commentating on it because I just like the way he talks you through a fight and all. So yeah, fingers crossed.
So you're not so much of a fan of the BBC style of commentary?
I'm quite surprised. I'm sure Frazer Clarke can put in an Ofcom complaint there, surely, can't he?
For what? Defamation?
Well, he was bullying his hairline.
Well, the problem is, then, the truth defence states that he's not lying. Frazer Clarke is bold. Yeah, but when you're getting punched in the head, I don't think the commentator...
It wasn't very...
Explaining that it's a bald head that he's punching is entirely necessary. It's on TV, it's not on radio. I can see his head is bald.
But he's a radio commentator, right?
Bald, I should say, not bold. Bald. Yeah. There is a difference.
I think Frazer Clarke's probably watching that fight, and he's probably watching the last 8 rounds with it on mute because he's like, I can't take it anymore. This is more brutal than actually the fight. You're going 8 rounds for the commentator in your ears. That's as hard as it goes. But yeah, other than that, I think I enjoyed this weekend. It was different because we didn't have any huge fights like we've had the last couple of weekends. But actually, there was just lots of good boxing to watch to kind of keep us ticking over. Yeah. Bit on Saturday, conflict between the two of them. That I obviously didn't watch the BBC card, TV licensing, if you're paying attention. I did not watch it. So that letter that you had, because let's be honest now, this is the part of the podcast where we're pushing to get to a certain time.
And no one's listening anyway yet.
When you opened it, were you like, oh, wow, this is what boxers done? They've seen that I'm a boxing fan now and they're coming for me.
No, it said you must pay your TV license. This property has, we've contacted you 6 months ago. I didn't live in the apartment 6 months ago, so that was the old people that were watching it. And then I swiftly went onto the website and filled out the form to state that I've never watched live TV. Within that I never watched live TV at all, particularly not BBC, and I never will do. And then I said, so cancel the boxing later. Yeah. We are watching Twitch. We are going to be watching other streaming platforms are available. Yeah. No more TV for us. No more live TV.
You should have just said, how old are you? 23. You should have just said, I'm a 23-year-old. I don't have a TV license. I don't watch TV. Yeah. And at the moment, you could have made the argument of, I don't watch TV because I'm making a TV program. Well,
I've told Sophie she cannot watch my live TV program because it's live. It's live on TV. It's live on YouTube. If it's a live YouTube, you're not allowed to watch it. It makes you think. So if you guys are tuning in, not live, so you can be watching this, you do not need a TV license to listen to the Puncher's Chance podcast or watch on YouTube.
We could bring something in, that guy who called you out last week. You haven't even sent him a message.
Yeah, just charge him a subscription.
Charge him a subscription to watch us.
A $1.
To fund your trip to the States.
Yes, absolutely. So if that sounds like a bit of you, if you like me, don't pay for your TV license because you don't watch it. Spend the time you would be watching, BBC Breakfast, watching the Puncher's Chance podcast. If you have enjoyed, stick around till later on in the week. We'll be previewing the upcoming boxing, bit of Monte Carlo, bit of the Gold Coast down in Australia. Lots of exciting stuff happening over there. And obviously great fights to come all the rest of the year. This should be your first stop for all of that, all the good stuff. Thank you all, and we'll see you all later in the week.
The Puncher's Chance. Punches Chance Podcast.